Indeed. This is Kent Richardson. I've been with him a long time as well, so give him a good hand because he's been through hell.
Thanks, Jim. I'm picking up on today, you're looking for some salient sort of points in order to address issues and problems with the Inland Revenue. And I could get up here and I could get very emotional, and I've avoided groups like this in the past because it does get very emotional for me at times. One particular meeting over in the North Shore, there was a guy there who did the administration review that I went through with Inland Revenue, and he was in the room, and when I found out he was in the room, I was just shaking like a leaf, and I said to Jim, "I'm sorry, Jim, I have to go. If I go in the room with that guy, I will assault him, or I'll probably throw a chair at him." And it gets like that. So my name is Kent Richardson. My prisoner number in Inland Revenue is 19441 Most of you will recognise that as an Inland Revenue number. I am the proud father of 3 daughters who are growing up too fast, and I say too fast because for the last 4 or 5 years I've had bugger all involvement with them. I'll try and drive to a salient point regarding the Inland Revenue, but I'll give you a brief overview of who I am, where I've come from. Chugging along with a relationship, coincidentally I hadn't got married with her, but we produced kids. We produced a daughter and then twin girls after that, so we had 3 under 3 at one stage. We split up in the beginning of 2001 when they were about 4 and 2. And the driving force between the split was her mother, the mother-in-law syndrome, so it's par for the course. I understand that. I'm a typical Kiwi bloke. Like to think that I've got a reasonable amount of common sense, and I don't consider myself to be stupid, but in the last 4 or 5 years I must be stupid, and it drives me nuts. And a lot of what has done it has been my experience with the Inland Revenue. We split up. I had access. I was seeing the kids quite regularly. It was fine. I had custody, holidays, the whole bit. I took the opportunity when the family left to set up my own business, promotional merchandise. When the family split, I was working for another company. I decided to go out on my own. That was fairly atypical for promotional merchandise, and I'm very good at it. In fact, I'm very passionate about it, or was, and I set up a company called Passionette. And chugged along quite nicely for about 12 months, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I was accused of touching my children. Now, a few of you who know me, it wouldn't enter my head. It really wouldn't. I'm more the person to go out and absolutely kill somebody if I found somebody doing that. That's me. So it wouldn't enter my head, but what it did for me in my head was it, and excuse the language on video, but it absolutely fucked my head. As a result, my business eventually crashed and hit the wall. I got to a point, and I now understand stress. I could talk to you about stress. I didn't want to open envelopes. I didn't open bank envelopes. I didn't want to talk to the IRD. I was just stuffed. In hindsight, what am I told? I'm told, take it on the chin, accept it, do all the bits, try and operate normal. You can't. You love your kids, you want to see your kids, and the worst thing, and you've only got to listen to talkback, you've only got to look at the reaction of people who are been accused of being a pedophile or touching their kid, and we all hate them. We all want to kill them. We all want to string them to a tree. We want to shoot them, you know, and all of a sudden I'm one of those people. And I can just feel, even now, just even the thought of me even being in that category is just, you know, it just absolutely abhors me. So my business suffered, and I ended up in quite considerable debt. And in terms of the Inland Revenue, of course, my child support commitments and liable parent commitments didn't stop, and they've never stopped. In fact, I get penalties for all sorts of reasons. Periodically, when I feel energetic enough or emotionally stable enough, I'll attack them on it. I'll ring up Mark Shipman, who's been an absolutely wealth of support and knowledge, and he'll give me an angle, and I'll write a letter, and I'll give them a bit of a burst for 10 minutes. I ended up joining the men's group at one stage, and with the help of Kerry Bevan as a Mackenzie friend, and this is my first point with the Inland Revenue, is we even went to the top out at Manukau City, the head of child support, a lady out there, and her PA receptionist, and we had an interview out there, and we went through all the things that we could probably do in terms of my situation. We explained my situation. It felt good to get it off my chest. I felt like I had somebody listening to me. I felt that we attacked a few of the issues, and we got some clarity as to where to head in terms of going for an administration review, in terms of the things that I could apply under, and we got some guidance from them. I subsequently filled out an administration review. I applied for all the different points. What are they? The criterias that they told me I was eligible for. In the process of filing that, I was rung up by another person at Inland Revenue and said, no, you're not eligible for this point, but you're eligible for this one over here. Why don't you change it slightly, etc., etc.? Oh, okay. That was the first flag. The first flag was conflicting advice from the top versus somebody sitting in the Takapuna office. Get to an administration review, and this particular person who ran the administration review, they're supposed to be independent and everything else, to be politically correct, I don't believe him. He's not independent. There's no unbiased. There was nothing in the room at all that gave me any hope. Came away from there a little bit confused. Got the results of the administration review. Everything was thrown out for one reason or another. Some points I wasn't eligible on because of a reason that nobody up until then had told me. On the grounds, certain grounds I wasn't eligible for, despite being told from the top that I was, despite being straightened up by somebody else that I was. Certain ones weren't eligible because there's an expiry date. You can't apply for something 2 years prior. So my whole thing around that whole administration review was the fact that I had conflicting advice from several different quarters. Every time I talk to a different Inland Revenue person, I get a different story. That continues today. I've got arrears at the moment that just keep stacking up. As a result of that administration review, I thought I learnt a lesson. I thought I learnt to be proactive with Inland Revenue, to ring them up every time I had a change of circumstance. By the way, we put in a plan where I was paying the child support. We got it down to a fairly reasonable sort of level, and we were addressing the arrears. So the plan was in place, and the plan's been in place for a couple of years. I had a change of circumstance last year where I was made redundant from a job. So the first thing I do, being socially prudent or aware or something, or having learnt from my experience, was ring the Inland Revenue. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? Oh, you need to do this. Okay, I will do that. Boom, boom, boom. I fill out the form, I send it off. As per you told me. 3 weeks later, I get a different phone call. What have you done? We note that your circumstances have changed. Boom, boom, boom. You need to do this. Hang on. You told me to do, somebody else told me to do this. Oh, no, that's wrong. That happens in a different case, blah, blah, blah. You need to do this. Different advice, two different people. Okay? Clearly, the second person is telling me that the first person hasn't done something right or they've missed. So I do this advice. So the last thing I'm expecting is a letter to show me that I have arrears from last year. But my arrears suddenly jumped up nearly $2,000. I'm absolutely furious. How does this happen? I did everything that you told me to do. I did a re-estimation of earnings. As soon as I found another job, we did the new forms. We did everything correctly, as per you telling me When I say you, Inland Revenue, I ring up a supervisor because the lady I'm talking to is just full of gobbledygook, trying to explain it and justify what she did. I can't understand it. This is where I suddenly start to believe that maybe I am stupid. I don't pretend to be a genius, but I don't believe I'm stupid. I get the supervisor. I get her telling me all sorts. Oh no, you should have done this and you should have done this. Hang on a minute. I did initially what you told me to do. Then someone else told me I had to do something different, and I did that as well. And now the third person, and you're a supervisor, telling me that I should have done something completely different altogether. And as a result, my liability, my unpaid stuff, or the residual debt, or whatever you call it, has climbed again. And I did everything that I thought that I was told to do. That's the bit that I fail to understand. I absolutely fail to understand it. So that may be my first point regarding the Inland Revenue, is conflicting stories. You get different stories for every time you talk to somebody. I've gone in there personally to try and talk to people. I've got an appointment on Tuesday to go in and talk to them to try and explain how did this happen. Because guess what? I did everything you told me to do. And I know physically the money has come out of my wages. I know the money was taken out of my redundancy money. And I know from the time that I was made redundant to after the following year, I was unemployed. So how do I end up with $2,000 more on what I already owe them? It's absolutely physically, mentally driving me nuts. What was the other point that I had for Inland Revenue?
The fact is that your children have been semi-abducted, haven't they? And you don't get to see them on a regular basis, do you? And there's always continuous allegations being made as soon as you get unsupervised.
Sorry. Yeah. I have when I say a usual set of circumstances, I've heard the story from too many people, too many guys out there. And it gets to a point now where I don't even tell my story anymore. I'm happy to tell my story today out of respect for Jim. I know Jim's very well, and he does a fantastic job. So I'm here out of respect for Jim and as the group as a whole. But I don't bother telling my story anymore because it's so usual out there. There are so many liable parents out there who kids have been transported to a different city, who have been falsely accused, and I now have to, if I want to see my kids, and I saw them for 3 visits last month, I have to travel all the way to Hastings at my own cost. I have to see my kids supervised at Bernardo's for 2 hours. If I'm lucky, I get 4 hours, and I pay $25 an hour for the privilege, for supervision. Now, I'm not counting the cost of taking, if we're allowed to go out of the centre, of shouting my kids, McDonald's, or buy them a little present. We go into the bookshop or something, and or the warehouse, and they get to choose a present. That's fine. That's fine. But you asked me to travel all the way down there and pay $25 an hour for the privilege, and I'm paying child support on top. That is starting to hurt me, and it's starting to piss me off. The other real point that I had about Inland Revenue is it's almost akin to what Paul was saying about the single living allowance. Because I lost my business and I ended up with a whole load of debt, I also stand here, on the one hand, wondering if I'm the world's biggest fucking idiot. Excuse my language. At a time when my business fell over and I had all sorts of debts, should I have declared bankruptcy and got rid of those debts? No. Kiwi boy Kenny in soccer circles, I try and do the right thing. I said to my debtors and people, no, I won't disappear. I'll pay you back. I'll chip away at it. So I get to Inland Revenue, and part of my story is the fact that I've had a business that falls over and I have all this liability, all this debt. And the equation is a blind equation. You have a living allowance of $11,000. The rest of it is taxable in terms of child support. there is actually nothing in that equation about existing debt. And I'm servicing existing debt on top of the blind equation that says that you earn this, but we only take out $11,000 for living allowance and you pay child support on everything else. Never mind my commitments, and my commitments is still sitting at the National Bank to the tune of about $26,000. It's come down from about 46. I'm still servicing that, and that is debt from a failed business. And maybe I should have gone like that and have said bankruptcy and wipe the slate clean, because we're almost now 5 years on and I'd almost be a free man in that respect. And I wouldn't have had to service some debt. So it's a blind equation at Inland Revenue, and that's one of my issues. And I thought when we went through the administration review, and Kerry was with me, that some of that would have been taken into consideration, because it is an outgoing. It's akin to rent. It's akin to feeding my face and trying to survive, but it's a real debt. It's a real debt that goes out at $700 a month to the National Bank. It's a consolidated amount that I arrange with them, but effectively it is debt from a failed business, and it's not taken into the equation of paying child support. So I'll leave you with that. I'm not going to stick around for the suicide thing, because that's another ball game altogether. And I've thought about that before. And one thing I have learned with the Inland Revenue and with any government agency, WINS or anybody, you don't mention anything like that on the phone. And my famous statement is, after being on the phone with them for an eternity and trying to iron things out, my famous statement was, I can understand how people throw themselves off buildings, and I was visited about half an hour later by the Henderson police, and they refused not to take me in, because if I didn't go with them I was going to be arrested, but I needed to accompany them to the Henderson police station. And they have the CAT team who come and visit you and do an assessment. And it becomes a point of protocol. The constables who turned up spoke to me for long enough, 5 minutes effectively. I said, look, I've got a run-in with Inland Revenue, here's my set of circumstances. They said, oh, that's all right. We don't have a problem with you, but protocol now says we have to take you to the station. If you don't accompany us, you'll be arrested, blah, blah, blah. I get down to the station, I talk to the sergeant for 5 minutes. Here's my set of circumstances. I'm a normal guy. I was still wearing a shirt and tie. Normal guy. Had a run-in with the Inland Revenue. Am I up to here with them? Yes, I am. Oh, you're a normal guy. We don't have a problem with you, but protocol says that we have to wait for the CAT team. They gave me a cup of tea. I'm in the bloody sergeant's mess. I'm socialising with these guys. It's normal. They think, oh, you're a normal guy. We don't have a problem with you. I get to the CAT team. The CAT team came along. I swear to God, had I had the foresight to turn my bloody watch on, 30 seconds the guy was in the room. Said, hi, how are you? I'm so-and-so. What's the story? Well, I said, I've had an run-in with Inland Revenue and I'm up to here with it all, blah, blah, blah. Within 30 seconds, the guy says, oh, no, you're all right. I don't have a problem with you. You're normal. My crime was the fact that I had a thought, or I said that I could understand why people top themselves. I can understand why people go into a room and, well, this is New Zealand. Thankfully, it's not the States. Go postal. We all understand the expression, go postal. I felt like going postal before. So it was strange that all these people thought it was quite normal. They didn't have a problem with me. I had a cup of tea with them. I talked to them there. I think total time, an hour and a half, and they drove me home. The guy who drove me home gave me his card. He says, mate, he says, if you feel like it, just give us a call. Here's my thing. Great guy. All the sympathy in the world from everybody. But, yeah. And I could stand here a lot longer and tell you a lot more, but maybe you need another instalment some other time. Anyway, and the reason I stay here, and I stay on the planet, as it were, and it's a dreadful expression, but the only reason I stay on the planet, and get a good photo of that, please, Murray.